I feel like this is something everyone can relate to because at some point you may want to take a lot of time off. And maybe you want to do a long vacation. Maybe your spouse is about to have a baby and you want to take a paternity leave. Learn from my mistakes, learn what I did right, learn what I did wrong. So it's more of a rumor than a headline. A new subscription model coming from Meta. So many people who have gotten their start on social media, who started from nothing, who were able to just grow businesses with this organic growth. I mean, the ways that this is going to affect those opportunities, the potential there is frankly awful. Welcome to the Media Books Podcast, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing. Owning a virtual firm today means having a professional and modern online presence, and in this podcast, we talk about how to do just that. My name is Kristen and I am the owner of Media Books, a media agency that provides creativity exclusively to accounting firms. And if you're an accounting firm owner, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Media Books Podcast. In this podcast episode, I am going to talk about how I am preparing for my second maternity leave. Now, before I get too into this topic, if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching this on a reel, this is also like a life or a business lesson. Right now, I am in the middle of a PCS, or also known as a military move, and I am staying at my parents' house while I have a baby, and then I will be moving to my next station in like 2 months. And life is crazy right now. And if you feel like now's not a good time to start a podcast, where am I going to record? I am recording right now in my little brother's old bedroom, which we are temporarily using for my son. If you're watching, there's like a map in the background. It is not the professional setup I want. And I struggle internally because with branding, I know presentation is important. This puts something out there into the universe that, do I have a nice office setup or am I in my son's nursery? Right now I'm in my son's nursery. So this is just life. This is how it goes. Sometimes you got to sacrifice some of the branding and marketing fluff for getting a job done. So I'm going to address that first. But today I am talking about actually how I am preparing for this maternity leave. Aside from things around me being in chaos, I do actually have a plan when it comes to media books and how we are figuring this out. First, though, I want to talk about a headline. Okay, so it's more of a rumor than a headline. The headline that I was intending to talk about was actually a video I saw a couple days ago on Instagram talking about a new subscription model coming from Meta. And it was essentially a tiered system where you can pay for a lot of fluff things like customer service, where you can reach someone 24/7, a blue check mark, and then like different levels of engagement is not the right word. They basically said if you pay, well, your post will be boosted higher in the algorithm. And so they have this subscription model, and it was ranging from like $15 to $350 a month. Crazy expensive for a lot of people. And for me, so many people who have gotten their start on social media, who started from nothing, who were able to just grow businesses with this organic growth. I mean, the ways that this is going to affect those businesses or those opportunities, the potential there is frankly awful. But now I'm trying to go back and actually find the article to talk about it in this podcast. And I am finding nothing other than other marketing influencers online talking about this. And so it feels like it's a weird rumor that's going around just because I'm not finding any official articles or official announcements. And so I'm wondering if they noticed backlash or if maybe it's just a rumor that's gone around. They talked about it, maybe once in like a blog post or some insider, let it leaked. But I'm having a hard time finding like reliable sources. Even the video that I originally shared a couple days ago has disappeared. It looks like it was taken down. So this is just to kind of warn you, if a lot of your marketing strategy is based on Instagram or Facebook, they're very likely putting together strategies right now to figure out how to get you to pay, essentially, to get your content front and center in front of your clients and your audience and, the people on social media. And then that's one part is, kind of be prepared for maybe a possible huge expense coming up when it comes to your marketing. The second thing that I want to address is, a couple of weeks ago, I also did a video or I did a podcast episode where the headline was about TikTok and how TikTok is having this battle with the US government and it may go away in 2025. And the point of that was basically to say, hey, remember, you don't own social media. This is a good reason to have a marketing strategy where you at least have two different ways to grow your brand, to grow your business. And if TikTok is one of them, maybe now's a good time to search for another way. This is another reminder of if Instagram or Facebook is one of the ways that you grow your business and they are about to put together a pricing model that makes it impossible for you to grow on either of those platforms, maybe now's another good reason to consider where you can grow your audience, grow your following. These are little, what is it, canaries in the coal mine? Is that the phrase? And while I realize that telling you to do something else for your marketing can sound really flippant, like you have all this time to just start investing in new marketing strategies, it is something you should seriously consider because it could be about the health of your business in the future. Not only that, but we have multiple issues. We don't know necessarily how true this is. They haven't rolled it out yet, but we're hearing a lot of rumors. Rumors or not, it is a good reason to consider maybe how your marketing strategy depends on these sort of marketing assets. If you took auditing in college, or if you are an auditor, you have an auditing background, one major risk factor for an auditing client is if the majority of their revenue comes from one client. That's a high risk. It's the same thing with marketing. If the majority of your clients come from one marketing asset, if the majority of your clients come from Instagram and they roll out this new subscription model that you cannot afford, you are right now in a high risk position. And so it's a good time to be considering other options. The third thing I want to talk about is actually a video I saw from Gary Vee. I'm a big fan of it. His delivery is very in your face and blunt, but his messaging, I feel like it's always spot on. And he recently released a video where he talked about in a couple years, maybe not even a couple, maybe by the end of this year, we are going to talk about how we are right now living in the golden age of social media and organic growth. The fact that you can grow a business on social media without having to pay any sort of subscription model is insane. And we're going to look back and say, oh man, I wish I took advantage of this. I wish I was more active, or I wish I really, figured out my marketing strategy in a way to use organic social media to grow my business, or to filter it in or funnel it into these other marketing assets that I now have. And I think he's totally right. Marketing, social media is changing so much right now with TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We're always trying to compete against them. Things are changing. And if you aren't really serious about your marketing strategy and diversifying and figuring out what works for you and what going to work for you long term, now is the time to do it. I know when it comes to our business, sometimes we're thinking, okay, how do I bring in clients this month? How do I bring in clients? I'm just trying to grow this year. But a lot of marketing strategies are dependent on long-term growth and sort of planting those seeds for the future. Now is the time to start considering your future for your business and what sort of marketing strategies are going to still be applicable then. Because, it's very clear right now, a lot of the things that worked a year ago may not be working next year. Okay, so this podcast episode's subject is how I'm preparing for my second maternity leave. So I feel like it is also appropriate to just recognize the fact that I am always out of breath pregnant. This happened last time I was pregnant. I was recording all these podcast episodes. This time I am already out of breath. I got a lot of extra blood pumping, and then my lungs are also being smushed by a small human. Please excuse my lack of breath. But like everything going on right now, we are making it work. And I kind of thought this was an interesting topic of maternity leave, and whether you are a woman thinking about having kids, whether you had your kids long ago or you never want to have kids, or you're a man who is, I don't know, you have kids or want to have kids, everyone. I feel like this is something everyone can relate to because at some point you may want to take a lot of time off. And maybe you want to do a long vacation. maybe your spouse is about to have a baby and you want to take a paternity leave. This can really kind of learn from my mistakes, learn what I did right, learn what I did wrong. I had my first child in February of 2023. This is May of 2024. So I had him back to back. And there was things that I did right that I want to talk about, things that I did wrong. And I want to talk about kind of how I'm doing things differently. And this second time around, a lot of the strategies may continue to work. They may not. But I felt like this is something that everyone can kind of use and have in their tool belt. So with my first, I was actually in a very interesting situation. In the months leading up to the birth of my son, Media Books experienced record growth. It was the quickest we had grown in a short amount of time. It was the most clients we ever had on our roster. I was hiring people, but I did not have enough runway of time to hire people and do the training that needed to be done before I left for my maternity leave. So we had to start a wait list. And I mean, that's all very exciting. You know, you're about to go on maternity leave as a business owner, as a woman who is about to have a child. I'm thinking, okay, I can still do this. This is going to be an exciting thing to come back to. You know, this is good, obviously. And a lot of things kind of went right. During this time, I really focused on hiring the right people, training those people, brought in additional team members. We had backups for, if we, additional work surprisingly came in the door or whatever. We spent months kind of testing this out, putting together processes, having really open dialogue, and kind of leading up to it. I felt like I prepared as best I could, having this being my first child and not really knowing what I was in for in regards to maternity leave, but also coming back. I knew I wasn't necessarily just planning for, the 2-ish months that I was taking off, but also I wanted to make sure that when I came back, I was giving myself not a lot of things that needed to be adjusted or redone or worked on heavily when I was trying to figure out my new normal. I know we're all sick of that word, or phrase, new normal, but yeah, I felt like I kind of did everything I could. For marketing, I did all my marketing ahead of time. I recorded all my podcasts. I did all my email campaigns, all my social media content, and it was all set. And that went great. There was no issues there. And really kind of, that's the great thing about marketing, especially if you're working with a marketer or you kind of have a long-term strategy, is that you can plan your content out ahead of time. And a lot of marketing content you can schedule. This is in fact something that I really emphasize around October, November, is that now is the time, then is the time, October, November, is the time to work on your tax season marketing content. When you're in tax season and you're so busy and overwhelmed, it's a really great time to prepare all of your marketing content, schedule it out, or at least have it ready so that someone who is not in the trenches of tax preparation, they can schedule it out during, January, February, March. And you can kind of just be consistent with your marketing, but it's not necessarily something that you have to be thinking about. So preparing marketing content ahead of time is always the right decision. No changes there. And with my first, I first want to talk about what went right. And I feel like we really nailed down putting together a process. Me and my team had very open dialogue as far as the tech that we wanted to use, the way that the processes were working for everyone involved. Everyone kind of had a different opinion of how things needed to be laid out and what was and was not working, what were points of friction, and not just everyday friction, but what was going to work when I was on my maternity leave versus what was going to work, when I came back. A big point for us that I'm sure actually a lot of you guys experience is the authentication codes for 2-factor authentication. My team had grown so much that it wasn't as easy to share a code with someone who was in a different time zone, typically me, because I was in Japan, who was on maternity leave. There were all these kind of little things that we were trying to figure out, and we spent a lot of time really ironing out those points of friction. And now it's not even a conversation anymore. We have that down. Over a year later, those were issues that were resolved. And there were sort of issues that were pending a little bit, things that were kind of hanging over our heads. But when you have a maternity leave or a vacation or some set of time coming up that you're going to be out of the office, it was a good push, frankly, to figure out, okay, no, how do we get this right? We can't just let this be pending any longer. What went wrong with my first maternity leave? Now, while we had all these processes set up, and I feel like we had a lot of the issues resolved, we didn't necessarily leave enough time for trial and error testing. And like, frankly, this was just working with the timeline that I had. It's something to kind of consider if you're thinking about having kids and you own a business and you're going to have kids in like a year, you may need like 2 years to get everything set up, and realize that this actually may be a very long process, because it wasn't necessarily just you need to have the processes in place, but we also needed more time for trial and error testing. So while I had all the processes in place and I thought 2 to 3 months were going to be a good trial to error testing period for, handing clients over and, setting up different communication channels, we just didn't have enough time each month to test those things out. With our kind of services, it's marketing content, it's monthly. We're in a very similar cycle that you have with a lot of your bookkeeping clients. We usually have a lot of content delivered by the first of the month. And then the first week of the month, we're scheduling. During the middle of the month, there's sort of a slow period. And the end of the month, we are preparing content for the month ahead. And then we sort of just cycle through that over and over again. So very similar to bookkeeping. We're in a monthly cycle. And 2 to 3 months was not enough time for us to really put all those processes to the test. And so me returning to work, occasionally I would check my email on maternity, and there were little fires that I needed to put out or little fixes that needed to be done. A lot of my team was able to handle, but they did encounter issues where I thought, okay, if we just had a few more months to test this out, talk through it, and do more training, this wouldn't have been an issue. And so that was one thing, is I did need to give myself and our team just more time to really settle into those processes. Now, when you're pregnant and you only have like 9 months from finding out until, delivering the baby, there's only so much you can do. So there's that, but I think it was also just a good kind of reminder why clockworking your business, getting things automated, not being necessarily solely dependent on one person in the organization is a good thing. Like so many remote workers, I am picky when it comes to my tech. I want a simple user interface, something that integrates with all the apps I'm already using, and I don't want to be nickel and dimed for every feature. I have run campaigns for plenty of accounting firms and used nearly every app under the sun, but for the past 4 years, I have been using Flowdesk at MediaBooks. Flowdesk offers a minimalistic user interface that does not cut back on any features. With workflows, automations, email campaigns, and advanced analytics, all for one price, I have no plans on switching anytime soon. And if you want to check out Flowdesk, you can get 50% off for your first year by simply clicking the link in the show notes. Now I want to shift the conversation to talking about what I'm doing with my second child. I first want to talk about what I'm doing differently, and then I'm also going to talk about what I'm doing the same. And the first thing that I'm doing differently is slowing down. With my first, we were in such an awesome place. Like, there was growth, it was exciting. And I think as an entrepreneur who's been trying to grow a business for years, I leaned into it. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to have a wait list. And when I come back, we're going to open it back up and we're going to have all these team members. And, we already had team members in place, but man, like, things are going awesome right now. I am leaning the opposite way. Knowing what is ahead with another baby, I mean, even to a degree, because now I'm going to have 2, I'm decided I'm actually going to slow down. I'm going to limit my services list, and I'm really going to focus on the services that I enjoy. And I mean, you could check out my website for specifically what services those are. But this is actually going back to some advice that I read in the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And in her whole book is really about women in the workplace. And one point she makes that is fantastic is if you enjoy your work, assuming, and you do want to come back to work, don't hold yourself back from necessarily a promotion or doing work that you enjoy because you think, oh, I'm going to have a baby soon. I don't want to give myself too much work when I get back. And yes, I know I just said slowing down, but really the idea here is to narrow in on the services that I really enjoy doing the most, so that when I do come back, I'm just going to be having a harder time trying to figure out, do I spend time with my kids who I love, or do I spend time at work, which I love, and just make everything that I am responsible for things I really enjoy doing. Because there's parts of my business that not necessarily I dislike, but they're not my favorite service offerings. And so I thought I would start by cutting back on those a little bit and really focusing on the services that I love the most. And so fortunately, those services are also services that we have really solid processes in place for and that were tested out already once with my first maternity leave. And now with my second, I feel very confident that our processes are going to work and that things are going to go smoothly there. The second thing is also creating enough time for these processes to be tested out. These processes I've had in place since the beginning of the year. And my goal is, again, to make sure that we have plenty of time to see and make sure that they work and to iron out every little issue. I am right now 7 months pregnant, and we are not doing any huge major changes to those processes. Right now, we are just in a testing period. We are not in a period of, chasing down really huge, new, big service projects. Everything we're doing, we feel confident in, and it has been tested. And so that's really the main thing that I'm doing differently is doubling down on the things that I know work and focusing on stability, because I think when your business is quickly growing, you do need to be involved. And I think that was the problem is last time our Media Books was growing pretty quickly. I was putting processes in place, but we need to just a couple more months to make sure everything is ironed out. And I want to talk next about what I'm doing the same with this maternity leave that I did last time and I'm going to do this time. And the first thing is a soft exit and soft reentry. So when I started my maternity leave February 1st of 2023. I didn't have my son until February 17th of 2023. And there's about a 2-3 week period where I wasn't necessarily not working, but I wasn't, definitely not putting in the normal hours. Part of that was just to give myself time to rest. And part of that was also to work more in the behind the scenes and give myself the flexibility to, frankly, go have a baby if I needed to, or just, continue to pour into the areas that needed love and attention. So soft exit, soft entry, what that looked like was basically me telling all my clients, hey, this is when I'm starting my maternity leave. I will not be available after this date. Anything you need from me will be delivered before that date. And then also checking in with them a week before saying, hey, are you fully set up? Are we all good? That worked out really well. Because after I, started my soft exit, it was just me and my team members. And I told them like, hey guys, this is what, I'll still be kind of behind the scenes, but I'm not going to be, as active as I am. And then I had one team member that I was like, hey, if I randomly go into labor, I'm going to text you and I trust you have everything covered. And that worked out great. Soft exit went perfectly. My soft reentry, again, went perfectly. I told people, hey, I was going to be back April 15th. And isn't that great of my son to just figure out when he needs to be born, within tax season, so that I can have I can kind of disappear when everyone else disappeared and you guys were doing taxes. But yeah, I said I was going to return April 15th. And I returned actually around more like April 1st. And really, I was just kind of working behind the scenes, going through my email, reviewing anything that needed to be updated or, what I missed out on, all those sort of things. And so it was a soft reentry. I was talking to just a couple team members. And then April 15th, a couple days later, actually, just made an announcement, hey, I'm back. And then I started taking on client emails responses. And this was especially great for a maternity or a paternity leave where you don't really know what to anticipate during this time. You don't really have a schedule. You don't know if you're going to, a schedule as in you don't know really when you're going to deliver or what life is going to look like on the other end. My son was in the NICU for a couple days, and we are extremely fortunate that we both left 5 days later, very healthy. Some people after childbirth do not. And so having this sort of flexibility where you gave yourself a window of this is when I plan to be back, and it's maybe a little bit later than when you actually plan to be back was just super, I think, comforting in my mind of having some cushion there of a soft exit, soft reentry. Highly recommend doing that if you are on or if you're approaching a maternity or paternity leave. Then this part I also talked about a little bit earlier, but prepping my marketing content ahead of time I definitely plan on doing that the same. Email campaigns, social media content, my podcast is a whole nother thing. But a lot of the challenge that I'm having this time around is in the last year, a lot of my marketing content for media books has changed to focus more on current events. And so now it's sort of a shift of, okay, how do we make sure that my marketing content for media books still doesn't change necessarily? How do I make sure that I'm still true to my brand and my voice and what I have been talking about for the last year? And so that is the sort of challenge this upcoming time. But really the whole idea of preparing your marketing content ahead of time, it can be done. And frankly, I am doing that with a lot of my clients this time around. A lot of our content is being prepared ahead of time for them so that when I go on my maternity leave, they have content that is all prepared. And, current events, it's a really great way to get people's attention and engage with people on the different marketing social platforms, but it is not needed in order to create great content. Hope that we can kind of show you how that's done. I am very intentional in making sure whatever marketing tips and tricks I share are tailored to the accounting industry. And as a result, I have built a pretty awesome community of accountants and bookkeepers. And while I love sharing advice on how to improve your website or capture the next great lead, I know you may have other challenges facing your firm, which is why I love partnering with other service and product providers that support the accounting industry. If you are one of those professionals that focuses on serving accountants, I want you to know that MediaBooks now provides multiple advertisement opportunities. You can promote your podcast, app, or services on the MediaBooks podcast or our newsletter and grow your reach. To learn more, visit mediabooksagency.com/sponsors or check out the link in our show notes. There you can find our media kit and apply to be a sponsor. MediaBooks, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing.